Hello, Dr. Arun. Hello, Dr. Naresh Shetty. We can see you in the meeting.
I have to where the share.
Dr. Arun, hope you can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, I can hear you too. I did speak to Dr. Rajaranjan and I did connect with him.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining in to the session hosted by Ramaya Hospitals on World Safety Week. It's 2:51 and we're going to begin the session in the next 9 minutes from now. And do not forget, we're also on live streaming on YouTube. We will just be sharing the links on the chat. You could just send across to all your friends and your close contacts who would be able to hear us today. Thank you so much for joining in once again. Stay tuned. We'll be right back into the session.
I don't need this alarm.
Can I check my slides?
Sure, doctor. I am just making you the presenter. You have the controls now. You could go ahead and share.
Okay, it's there. Okay, no, it's here.
No, you click on screen so that the.
Oh, then, and then I'll go
Then
on.
you can go to the presentation. You just click on screen.
Doctor, your video is not visible. Could you share your, yeah.
It's visible?
One moment yet. No, your video is not there. The presentation is up, yes. You could just make it full screen, sir.
Now?
Yes, it's full screen. We can view your presentation.
Okay, so
Doctor, if you could share your video too, then we will be able to view your video along with your presentation.
now what?
You don't want your video to be on?
Now we will, when they tell us, we'll put it on. Okay. You're sharing your screen. Now we'll go back.
No, sir, your face will not be recognized there. So we want your video on.
Yes.
Your face to be seen.
Yes.
Just click on.
Just send the video, sir. I'll confirm if we can view you and hear you as well the presentation.
Stop this. Just click here. Start. On top. This.
Yeah.
No, sir, this.
Oh,
Hello.
Yes, sir.
yeah.
We could see your presentation as we view your video and your audio is very clear.
Fine. Now we go back to. How do you go back?
Can I go ahead and take back the controls, doctor?
Yeah.
Thank you.
You put his name on.
Hello, Dr. Kishore.
Hi, hi, hi.
Hi. Good evening, sir. Thank you so much for joining in. We will begin the session in next 3-4 minutes time from now.
Presentation. Early birthday.
Hello, Dr. Shashank. Thank you so much for joining in. We just unmuted your line, Dr. Shashank.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, sir.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Dr. Arun, are we good to begin? It's 3 p.m. now, or do we wait for another 1 or 2 more minutes?
I'm prepared. So let me just check as to how many participants are listed. So once we have a good crowd, then I think we can go ahead.
Sure, do let us know.
Hello, Dr. Arun.
Hello, sir. How are you?
Fine, fine. How are you?
Yeah, I would like to welcome Dr. Shashank, Dr. Alva, Dr. Naresh Shetty, and Dr. Rajarajan. Good afternoon to all of you.
Good afternoon to everyone. Good
How are
afternoon,
you all?
Dr. Naresh Shetty. Good afternoon, sir.
Hi, hi.
Good afternoon to all. Good afternoon, Dr. Naresh Shetty.
Good afternoon. Very good afternoon. Nice to see all of you. We're very smart. Yeah, I think I'll going to remove this so that I also get smarter.
Sorry. ಇಂಟ್ರೊಡ್ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ನೀವು PPT ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಇಟ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಿ.
Dr. Arun, I'll wait for your indication to begin the session. Once you say we are good to go, then we will just kickstart the conversations.
I think we'll wait for a couple of minutes. It's just about 3 o'clock, and we have, as of now, close to about 60 attendees. Shall we wait for another couple of minutes so we can have a good number to begin with?
Sure, we can do that. So let's welcome all the participants on the session. Thank you so much for joining in. Ramaya Hospitals is very excited to invite you all for World Safety Week webinar. We're just going to begin the session in the next 5 to 7 minutes. We have all the stalwart speakers on with us today, and Dr. Naresh Shetty, Dr. Rajaranjan, Dr. Shashank Devapur, and Dr. Nandakishore Alva will be the speakers of the day, and Dr. Arun Mahavaji is going to chair the conversations and welcome everybody into this session. We will begin the conversation probably another 5 to 7 minutes from now. We request you to stay tuned and we'll be right back into the call.
Hi, Arun, you can hear me?
I can hear you, sir.
Yeah. Just
I
checking.
think we have about 70 participants now. So it's 3 o'clock, 3 minutes, 3:05. I think we should be ready to start. So we'll give a couple of minutes more. So we expect to hit 100. So I think 100 is a good number to start the session. So it's reaching about 70 now.
And just for everybody's information, we are doing a live on YouTube today, and there is a live streaming which is happening. And I've been sharing the live YouTube link to all the participants. We request you all to share the same with all your close contacts or all to your contacts, so people can actually go ahead and click on the YouTube link and watch them live now.
So what I get is that a good number of people are also watching our YouTube channels and also on the Facebook live. So I think we should be ready to start.
Sure, Dr. Arun. Are we good to begin now?
Yes.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining into the session. Ramaya Hospitals is proud to welcome you all for webinar on World Safety Week. As the World Health Organization celebrates September 17th as World Patient Safety Day, 2020 has been a challenging year for our healthcare workers. Over 3 million population has been affected by this pandemic, and healthcare workers have borne the maximum brunt. Hence, World Health Organization has dedicated the year 2020 Patient Safety Day for health workers with the theme Health Worker Safety, a priority for patient safety. As part of the Patient Safety Week, Ramaya Hospitals is hosting a webinar to share some of their own experience, and also they've invited expert speakers Dr. Naresh Shetty, Dr. Rajaranjan, Dr. Shashank Devapur, Dr. Nandakishore Alva, who will share their insights on some of the safe priorities to be followed during this pandemic. Thank you once again for joining into the session. We warm welcome you again. And next 1.5 hours, you will be hearing these stalwart speakers speaking to all of us. And now I would welcome Dr. Arun Mhawaji to chair the conversation. And over to you, Dr. Arun.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Ashwini. Myself, Dr. Arun. I'm the Assistant Hospital Administrator at Ramaya Memorial Hospital. I welcome all of you to the webinar hosted by Ramaya Memorial Hospital today on occasion of the World Patient Safety Day. So millions of healthcare workers are affected by the pandemic, and the WHO has rightfully dedicated this year of patient safety towards healthcare workers, and is celebrating the World Patient Safety Day with the theme Healthcare Worker Safety, a priority for patient safety. Healthcare workers are in the front lines of fighting this virus at one end, and at the other end, the healthcare workers also fighting a host of other things like healthcare associated infections, the violence and the stigma associated with this the pandemic. So I, on behalf of all of you, take this opportunity to salute the millions of frontline workers who have lost life, who have selflessly dedicated themselves in this fight towards the pandemic. And I join all of you in saluting them. And with this, I'll start the first session for today. The first topic is, the lessons learned from COVID-19, agility and adaptability of the organization. As I've said, the COVID-19 pandemic has brought about an unprecedented situation, and the world has been caught off guard. The legacy healthcare systems has been tested, and it all but has succumbed to the pandemic. And only those organizations which are agile and are willing to adopt are able to survive this challenge. And one such organization is the Ramaya Group of institutions. And under the leadership of Dr. Naresh Shetty, it has truly demonstrated what an agile organization can do and perform at the time of crisis. right from setting up of a high functional team to guide the clinical protocols, to setting up of the first flu clinic, to dedicating an entire 200 bed COVID wing, which later expanded to 500 bed dedicated COVID hospital. We have managed over 2,500 cases with the lowest case fatality rate as declared by the government data itself. And we are doing like any other responsible organization would do to serve the community at this time of crisis. We have not stopped at that in terms of managing the crisis, which we have gone beyond that in terms of establishing the other requirements in terms of having a dedicated information hub to provide information to the relatives of the patients, to starting the probably one of the first few plasma banks in this country. And it is also a proud moment for us to inform that we were one of the earliest organizations to start a dedicated post-COVID clinic, and we have managed over 100 patients in the last 10 days of opening that particular clinic. And while I say this, we have not lost our focus on the non-COVID care as well. So at the time of lockdown of close to about over 90 days, we have performed over 1,500 surgeries. We have done about 300 deliveries, and also about 5,000 dialysis were performed. So our focus on non-COVID care was also there at the same time where we were managing the COVID situations as well. So balancing both is an arduous task only an organization with exemplary leadership can do. And this is what we have demonstrated. And there's no better person than Dr. Naresh Shetty to share his insights because he has been in the forefront of fighting this pandemic. He has been in as an invited expert member by the government of Karnataka also to share some of the clinical protocols, some of the best practices that we are following. And rightfully, the government has also taken some of our examples in managing the situations. Let me just 1 second. So let me introduce the first speaker today, Dr. Naresh Shetty. Dr. Naresh Shetty is he is a senior orthopedic surgeon. He allows himself to call himself a clinician first than an administrator. And he is the president, Ramaya Memorial Hospital, and also president of Ramaya International Program and Strategic Alliance. He is the chief of Ramaya Advanced Learning Center, which is doing cutting edge research and clinical trials. He has been the president of Karnataka chapter of the Association of Healthcare Providers of India. He is a National Academic Committee member of the Health Sector Skill Council. In fact, we have been one of the first healthcare organization to start a dedicated skill center way back 2 years back, and supporting government of Karnataka in skilling healthcare workers. He is a board member of the National Board of Education. He is a past president of Bangalore Orthopedic Society. He is a board member of the Quality Assurance Cell of the Rajiv Gandhi University of Health Sciences, president of Orthopedic Association of South Indian States, and he has several awards and achievements to his credit: the Mother Teresa Award, the Doctors Day Award from the Lions Club, and the recently he has been also been awarded the Dronacharya Award. So I now invite Dr. Naresh Shetty to share his inputs. Over to you, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, sir.
Okay, right.
Yeah, we can hear.
Okay, fine. I think today I have been given a topic to talk on, which I think all of us are suffering since the last 5 months. The most important thing is from the day it started, where we have come. Why is it not moving?
So click on the down arrow.
It's not moving, that's all.
You can stop and reshare the presentation.
Yeah, okay, fine.
We can see it now, sir.
Okay, right. So we will be talking on agility and adaptability of Ramaya Group of Institutions. I dedicate this talk to all my colleagues who have been actually in the forefront and who have been doing tremendous job. And I've been just kind of a mentor to most of these activities. I think to go back on the milestone, the first case in India was seen on January 30th. The first lockdown took place on March 24th. The first case in Ramaya Memorial Hospital as well as the college came on June 20th. Though we were prepared from March 23rd, the government told us to wait. And so we had to wait for almost literally 2.5 months before we started. And today, as per today, we have treated more than 3,500 patients. So what was our initial hiccups or the learning? Here is the unseen, unknown enemy that came about, and we did not know how it's going to actually attack us. And there was a fear of the unexpected with everyone around. There was panic. People wanted to get out of this place. Many people wanted to take leave. And more important than that, everyone had an opinion how actually we should go about tackling this major problem that are there. So many of you would have read about the Singapore Airlines or the Qantas Airlines, which talked about the journey to nowhere. The flight takes off from Sydney, goes all around Australia, and after 4 hours come back to the same port. This idea was to ensure that the planes take off and not stranded on the airport. I think for us also, we were wanted not to be stranded at one point, but we need to move around. And that's what we did in our institution. So the two parts to it. One was the agility part of it. One was the adaptability part of this organization. Let me go across to the first, the agility part of it. You would have all seen a panther as it runs so beautifully, trying to catch its prey. It is such a smooth, graceful action that keeps on happening. And so to define in agility, it is the ability to move quickly, easily, and gracefully. That is all about agility. And so in today's business circle, in the new world, it is not the big fish which eats the small fish. It is the fast fish which eats the slow fish. And so it's a dramatic change in the way we do things. It is not the speed. If we believe that agility is speed along with certain gracefulness and certain ideas, which will trump all this new normal. And no better said by Klaus Schwab, founder and executive chairman of the World Economic Forum. And when we talk about agility in a hospital setup, what are the things that we actually need to do? It could be the infrastructure, it could be the manpower, it could be the protocols and the guideline, it could be just the training. And I think from day one that I took the charge, I knew that we need to have a dedicated COVID center. In fact, we spent hours and hours together with the government of Karnataka telling them, please don't mix the two. you will create a catastrophe. And we had to go on insisting, please ensure that these two patients are kept separated. So the first thing was no mixing of the patient. Number two was separate entry and exit. Third was most important, and I always call it the safety of my healthcare workers. And of course, as an accredited unit, we need to ensure quality is always there. And so we started with the infrastructural changes. We ensured that one part of the building was totally segregated from the rest. We ensured that there were 200 beds which had separate entry and exit, where the doctors had a separate entry and exit. The patient and the doctor did not meet except when the doctors or the healthcare workers were with PPE. Once we did that, then we came to a second problem. What happens when an emergency patient comes? We do not know whether they are positive, negative, suspect, we do not know. And so then we had to dedicate one specific operation room only towards those patients. After that, we had a lot of patients coming for fever. We did not know how they did not have the test been done, and that those days the tests were very difficult to be doing. We had to wait for 48 to 72 hours, but the patients were there and we did not know what to do. We could not send them to the COVID ward because they were still suspect. And if at all they were not COVID, we did not want to get into trouble. And so we created a separate suspect ward where all the patients were not defined whether they were positive or negative stayed there. And then we ensured that there is a fever clinic where every person who had any issues, they come to the fever clinic, get them checked. If the doctors had a doubt, then they go for the investigations. If at all one disease had so many protocol in process, it was COVID. Every day, either the WHO or the CDC or the ICMR or the government of India came with newer and newer protocols. Of course, the intention was to minimize the impact of the disease, to prevent transmission to the healthcare workers or to the patient or the relatives. We needed to constantly update and modify treatment protocols based on what's the new thing that's coming. And we had to report compliance at all times to the government bodies. And then finally, everything we need to analyze of how India was doing actually in this area of issues. The manpower. First of all, we needed to ensure how many of our manpower were good enough to go into COVID wards. So we needed to weed out all the comorbid sisters and healthcare workers. We needed to ensure that people above 50 years did not get into this part. And after that, then we had to train them of what to expect and what not to expect. We needed to tell them that safety was a priority at all times. And most important, we had to get them motivated because fear was the key and everyone was so scared. But I must say that if there was one segment of the healthcare workers which really made a difference, it was the nursing who actually always were ready to get into the groove and not the doctors who little were reluctant partners. The next was the PPE problems. We had to ensure that the PPE that we got initially were of short supply. It was very expensive and everyone wanted to protect themselves. And then we looked at, as any voluntary body, look at quality. And then we had a whole lot of quality issues among these PPE. Training was another problem that we had to encounter. And so how to wear it. So we had a group of doctors who actually, for every group of healthcare workers we went in, they were training these people prior on doffing, what are the things that they need to do it. And when you had so many PPEs coming in, we had another problem of how to do a disposal of PPE. And when you knew how to give it to, then it became more expensive. But during all this time, though we did a lot of good things, I always believed that we also needed to look out what our weakness was. And most common weakness that I found was everyone had fear, which was expected. But I think as medical professionals, we could not go back. We are like the soldiers. Though they called us the warrior for many other reason, but we had to do our job. Quite a few professionals had lack of enthusiasm. Quite a few took shortcuts. They got sick, or some of them just went inside and came out. And then a lot of sisters and otherwise left the place, and there was a huge amount of attrition that took place. So, but these are expected challenges for any institution. And so we had to look at this as a part of our work towards going in. And so I looked at, this is the story of a rat and a diamond. It so happened, one of the diamond merchants had a couple of diamonds, and one of the rat swallowed the diamond. And so quickly, when he saw that there were quite a few of those rats available, and he did not know how to catch it, he called the rat catcher and told him that he wanted the diamond back. When that person came in, he looked at all the rats. There were quite a few of them. But he picked one of them, opened the rat, and lo, the diamond came out. This merchant was very shocked and surprised too. And he asked, how did you manage to locate that particular rat among so many rats that were there? And so the rat catcher said very simply, you know what? When idiots get rich, they don't mix with the rest of the crowd. Or, in other words, when idiots become smart, they don't mix, or they don't ensure that whatever the learnings are not spread to other people. These lessons that we learned was an important aspect, and we made it very clear to the rest of our people that whenever we did something new, we had some challenges, we had some issues, but we learned from those. And so many a time we became smarter only because we made mistake and went throughout. If agility was one part of it, adaptability was another requirement for an organization. And how do you define an adaptability? It's the quality of being able to adjust to a new situation. You could have a plan A, you could have a plan B, and both may not work. So you should have the flexibility to take a plan C also. And this is what was required in the COVID situation. The mind to be flexible and not being rigid at all times. And so quickly, all of us had to adapt to a new normal. Gone were the days we had the patients in front of us. There was emotional as well as the physical distance. Consultation became more virtual. Suddenly we started looking at technology that could help us. We wanted to reduce the size of the manpower that was going inside simply because we knew now that we are going for a long war, and it was not going to be something that is going to be over in 2 or 3 months. And we needed to ensure that the utilization of the manpower was good. After each of this, we also found there were certain challenges. When the emergency started coming in, we had some deliveries, we had some cesareans, we had some road traffic accident. And so we found a way out, but in the same center, we ensured there was a dedicated operation room available. And in this dedicated operation room, there was a dedicated anesthetist, a dedicated nursing staff who did not go anywhere but stayed there during this. Once we had this, then suddenly we realized the shifting of the patient to this area was another difficult problem. And so we had to look at how best that we could move out. You won't believe the first time when we did the first emergency, both the nursing staff as well as anesthetists were in PP for 4 hours before the patient came into the operation room. That was the learning. Quickly we got into the action. We got into an idea of how do we move it out. And after that, of course, there was no issues about it. The hospital also started getting more and more prepared for this eventuality. We started screening of the patient. No patient could walk in and walk out, or most of the relatives were told only one relative was allowed inside. We ensured that there was a segregation done. So through the fever clinic, we ensured that patient's temperature was seen, patient pulse oximeter was looked at, any reason of cough and all, we actually segregated them out. So then we knew positive, negative, or suspect. The idea was to optimize patient care. We wanted to ensure that the two don't get mixed. Many a times in the non-COVID section of the hospital, suddenly a patient who was earlier COVID negative now became COVID positive. And so then again, all the people were again did not know what to do. And so we created a team and we trained this team so that the shifting of a positive patient in a non-COVID area became very swift without any information to anyone. The movement was taken on another elevator, the patient was shifted to the ambulance, and the backup was the whole area was sanitized immediately. Technology came into more in the forefront than any time in healthcare. We had the war room, we had the remote access monitoring, we had the virtual consultation. I think most of the patients now, all the senior consultants were in a war room, actually helping the younger population or the younger doctors to come up to a certain conclusion and treat the patient. We also had a remote access monitoring of patients in the critical areas so that we treated them better. But one of the major key area that we always felt was the lack of communication in the whole place. The doctors went inside and treated the patient. We had a group of nurses who went inside, treated. We had a people in the center, the war room. They were taking care of the patient, but no one talked to the patient relatives. So we were looking at how do we actually do this. And then more important, we found that we had to ensure there was an adherence to protocols and lay down process, irrespective of which doctor went in. Because for the first time, we had preclinical, paraclinical, and clinical all together trying to treat COVID. It was no more just medicine, it was everyone. And for the first time, I think we had everyone together trying to fight a major battle. And that was perhaps the biggest challenge and the greatest learning, where everyone realized that we can all come up with trumps if at all we are all ready to do as a teamwork. I was always very, very careful that we needed to ensure that our healthcare workers are taken care of. We needed to always remind people, especially seniors, because you take things for granted. So training was a very important part of it. The rest of the things, of course, came into picture. And as an administrator, we was always walking on an edge. Every day, there were so many calls, so many people giving opinions, and so many policymakers, so many bureaucrats, so many politicians telling us what to do and what not to do. And then, as usual, when things were not going well, the government just pushed all its burden onto the private. And then we had to also face the media besides the patient. But I guess that's the life of an administrator. You need to constantly be ready, update yourself. There was also a challenge about availability of the materials, whether it was PPE or otherwise. We need to ensure that adequately the manpower are used. And most important than that, we had to find quick solution. It was not that all solutions were right, but we had the capacity to think that this was the right in that particular situation, and if required, change the gear in the next time. And so, what I was giving you another story of a cow and a tiger. One cow was grazing in a forest, and as it saw the tiger behind it, and it started running away. Finding nowhere to go, it jumped into the nearest pond, which was full of slush. The tiger did not have anything else to do. It just followed without thinking. Now, both the cow and the tiger were in the slush and were not able to move. The cow was smiling and the tiger was getting angry. And it asked the cow, "Why are you smiling?" The cow just said that both of us in it, but I know I have a mentor. I have someone who we can look forward who will come. The tiger said, "I am the king of the jungle. Who do you think will come to you?" The cow said, "Now that we are both in a soup and both cannot get out, I have someone who will come. Let the sun set and you will see it." And lo, behold, when the sun set, the owner of the cow came there in search of the cow. It realized what had happened and he pulled the cow out of the slush where the tiger was left alone. In life, we always have to decide that we cannot fight this battle alone. We need a lot of people along, and we need a lot of mentors also to take this battle. If at all of us believe that I can do a job single-handed, I think we are all wrong. And it is important that teamwork should be the most important hallmark of that. And for all of us, we should ensure that there's a mentor that is there. And as it is, we went across, as like Arun said, whatever the gaps that I found along the way. As I said, when the patient and the relatives did not have any contacts with either the doctor, we found the COVID Information Center, where a group of volunteers, young doctors and young BDS students, they worked in batches, ensured that the patient got the right information, gave us the patient feedback, and now they are also looking at the health status of the patient who have been discharged. They're doing a great job under one Dr. Vibha Shetty from the dental school. When we found that a lot of patients in the ICU did not do well, we had to think otherwise. So we said, if plasma was one of the reasons that they could help it, we started our plasma bank. And I guess that also came in because we found there was a gap. We had a blood bank, but we did not have the plasma bank. We started it all. We were almost the second in the state to have a plasma bank. When I found that the patient went home, he did not know where to go because everyone told him to stay at home for 2 weeks, but he wanted to talk. And that's the time we started the Ramaya Home Care Services. It was not only for asymptomatic patients who wanted to stay at home, get them treated. It was also meant for patients who want continuity of care. And that started our virtual consultation for those patients. When we started looking at patients who were coming back, we found that a lot of patients had problems. They had either pulmonary problems, they had cardiac problem, they had neurological problem, and a lot of people had difficulties even walking. That gave us our dream, a new vision, the Center for Post-Acute Care. We were almost the first one in the state to start the Center for Post-Acute Care and Rehabilitation. And what does it do? It does a comprehensive assessment of this patient, follow-up investigations, ensures that this patient return to normal, get them rehabilitated so they are as normal as possible. And more important, we are trying to get a data so that it becomes a scope for our research and development. Believe me, it is not the acute care that's going to make a difference now. It is the chronic care, post-COVID care, which is going to make a difference, because anywhere between 20% to 80% of the people who have had COVID will have some problem or the other, and we need to treat them. So I would just leave with a take-home message. I have not talked the business model at all. Somewhere otherwise, I will talk about business strategy, but I can only tell you, one needs to be agile as a panther, as graceful as a panther. One needs to adapt to a changing situation. One needs to be very, very flexible. Rigidity is something that should be thrown out of the window. We need to work as a business strategy because we cannot continuously ensure that put in our money, because unless money comes in, We can't take care of our healthcare workers, nor care of our doctors. So it's very, very important that we do not forget this part. Important is to reduce your expenses and reduce your liabilities. And we have worked quite a lot on that. But the most important cash that you have in any organization is your manpower. And if you can motivate this group of people to do what we want, I think you can't get a better deal than anything. But there are going to be times of storm. There are going to be moments of darkness. And I can only assure and tell you that one needs to be calm, but one needs to show a lot of compassion in the way that we work. Because that's the only way we can work. Because any stress, you're actually, already people are on stress, you're trying to give them extra stress, which is not the idea at all. So the last slide is, I hope the mask will be our vaccine for now. Distancing will be the immunity, and hand wash is the medicine to look forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for a really engaging presentation that you presented today, right from sharing with the audience what we did from the beginning. As you said, we were one of the first few hospitals to start the flu clinic. We joined hands with the government of Karnataka. You being an expert member, put across to the government about the need for a dedicated COVID speciality, and that's how we as an organization also dedicated close to about 500 beds for the COVID. And we did not, as you also mentioned, right from setting up of clinical teams, setting a war room, and further to that, setting up the plasma clinic and the post-COVID, we were truly agile. So, which is all these things are nearly a testimony to the fact that we did all these things. To the audience, there's a lot of carry-home messages in terms of how we need to adapt ourselves as individuals. We need to be safe always, stay safe. Thank you, sir. Let me go to the next presenter. The next topic. So next topic is on the IT, the importance of information education and technology at times of COVID. And who better a person than Mr. Rajarajan? Mr. Rajarajan is a Senior Vice President, Partnerships and Clinical Workforce Strategies at Cure Health Solutions India Private Limited, which is a subsidiary of Ventec Solutions USA. He's a good friend of us, and he's been in our organization for quite a number of times. And to introduce him is an honor to me as well. He's a seasoned healthcare management professional, and he brings a powerful blend of visionary leadership with a global perspective and a strong business acumen. He has been associated with various successful ventures in India and abroad, especially in areas of multi-specialty hospitals, oncology, cardiology, diagnostics. And in his penultimate assignment was he was leading as a Chief Operating Officer with PLN responsibilities in one of the major organizations. He is a member of American College of Healthcare Executives, life member of CAHO, that is a consortium of accredited healthcare organization, the Research Foundation for Hospitals and Healthcare Administration, and Telemedicine Society of India. He is currently pursuing his executive general management program from the Indian Institute of Management, Trichy, and postgraduate diploma in medical ethics and medical law and ethics from the National Law School of India University, two of the most premier institutions in India. He has earlier completed his master's in health service management from Apollo Hospitals, Chennai, and also Charles Sturt University, Australia, and MSc in psychology from the University of Madras. He is an industry advisory council member for NITE School of Management, Bengaluru, and also visiting faculty, Innovations and Design Thinking, SRIHER, Faculty of Management Studies, Chennai. To just introduce about the topic, healthcare industry has always traditionally been a slow adopter of technology. So it is, they say it takes close to 20 years for a healthcare organization to adopt what any other organization would have already put in place. So traditionally, we are generally a slow adopter of technology, but COVID-19 brought about a major change in terms of adoption of our technology. Right from setting up of digital front doors, that is like setting up of a clinic. No, right from setting up of a screening mechanism of the entrance to the telemedicine, be it the teleconsultations at the OPD or the tele ICU. The healthcare has been quickly adopting to the newer changes. Another area where healthcare has been quickly adopting the technology is the electronic health records. This necessitated from the need for digitizing the health records, and also from the point of view of generating data. So data and analytics have been the main theme in our fight against COVID. Every day we are getting new insights, new research inputs in terms of how we are fighting the virus the world over. The big data and analytics has truly come in help in terms of clinical management, the vaccine development, and also in developing models for to sort of predict the spread of virus and all these things. And as I would want to cut short my talk, and then I leave it to Mr. Rajarajan to begin his presentation now. Over to you, Mr. Rajarajan.
Yeah, good afternoon, one and all. A special good afternoon to Dr. Naresh Shetty and other panel members, Dr. Shashank, Dr. Nandakishore Alva. Thanks, Dr. Arun, for the lovely introduction. And I also would like to thank Dr. Uma Shankar. Can I just get the sharing option to start sharing my screen? Ms. Ashwini, can you help me share my screen? You have to enable the thing.
Over to you, doctor. It's with you now.
Yeah. You're all able to see my presentation?
Yes, sir. We can see it.
Yeah. Okay. Again, it's a very important week, the World Patient Safety Week, and we are amidst the coronavirus pandemic, and God knows when we would get out of it. But the resilience is there in each of us, and we're all doing all that we could do to progress from here, especially when it comes to treating patients, when it comes to finding a cure, or also when it comes to personal discipline and hygiene, wherein each of us as an individual citizen also could contribute to by not adding to the tally of the country. So, ladies and gentlemen, today I'm going to talk about capacity emerged from information, education, and technology during COVID-19. I'm going to touch upon various aspects where these information, education, and technology has come together, and that which has really made us go forward on these. So some of the recent quotes to start with Arundhati Roy. Historically, pandemics have forced humans to break with the past and imagine the world anew. This one is no different, talking about the COVID pandemic. It is a portal, a gateway between one world and the next. Look at the positivity over here. Yes, we are reeling under pressure. There is a lot of patients who are contracting with COVID, especially more so in the healthcare professionals. We do get messages of doctors who are dead. We do get messages of some of the front-end healthcare professionals who are dead. But again, some of the things what we need to look at is, this is a period of transition. It is a period of preparation for us. we need to take a lot of things more, what do I say, in a big way. For example, the best thing which we really need to take in a big way is the climate change. There's enough information in education and technology aspects working on it, but then not all of us are for it, going with it. So this pandemic of corona, the smallest of the virus, in comparison to the the bigger thing that which is a climate change, is causing so many problems in each of our lives. And but how Arundhati Roy puts it, it is actually a transition. It is a gateway, it's a portal for what we are today to a world of tomorrow. And Joseph Borrell, again, a very important European Union minister, so he said that COVID-19 will reshape our world. We don't yet know when the crisis will end, but we can be sure that by the time it does, a world will look very different. Already it has started. I used to remember as a kid, there was a story in CBSE in my Gulmahar reader about a particular person spending his time in a bunker and all those stuff. We've heard of World War related bunkers where people were kept safe and stuff. But then we are all in a very similar situation. We're all within our houses. We have restricted our, exposure, most of us. And I salute to all those who still go to the work because they need to be there. They're healthcare workers. And so it is important that we take enough precautions and preventive aspects to be followed. We will be seeing that. I'm sure my other speakers, and also it was wonderfully eloquently told by Professor Dr. Naresh Shetty as well. Another important aspect is the way things are going to change. The consumers will continue to find value in experiences post-pandemic, but the focus will shift to those activations that are driven by meaning, authenticity, and connection. So this, this is borderline of the design thinking aspect, which we have to imbibe in our everyday processes and workflow and our innovation process, there which we are definitely going to further, because the world tomorrow, as we know from the experts, is going to be different. And yeah, there it is from the most powerful person in my life, talking about a toddler son, my wife. He has lost a quarter of his childhood shut down and staying indoors due to COVID-19. Now, this not only has a huge trauma on the child, which he may not be even realizing because he's 4 years old, but then also on parents and all the other family relatives and all those people thinking, what is happening? So one of the key thing is mental health is a real big problem for children and adult alike. So as stay calm, and we need to do a lot of things. And one particular thing which tops that is to practice the mindfulness approach. So as I said, before we get into this education, information, and technology, when we plot it as a Venn diagram, the overlapping area is where the disruptors or the situational disruptors have happened. So we would see each of those, whether it is going to stay as a disruptor or it is only going to be there for this period of time. So when we look at each of those examples, we will be able to further explain that. Again, I would like to throw upon your, bring your attention to the Gartner hype cycle. It's about 4 years since they started year on year to provide a hype cycle wherein various technology in the digital health hype cycle, and also with respect to the various new entrants in the healthcare space, healthcare provider space, also is listed. So there are two different Gartner hype cycle for health. One is the digital health and the other is the regular healthcare provider. So what they do is they place all this on a two-dimensional time and interest graph, and they have phased it into 5 buckets. One is the technology trigger, which as soon as it starts, it actually takes a lead phase. A peak of exaggerated expectations is where it rises, it plateaus, and it has to fall. That it gets into a trough of disillusionment. Between the peak of exaggerated expectations and trough of disillusionment, if the related parties make the required amends, that becomes a disruptive process or a disruptive innovation in that particular product, which can directly take it to the path of enlightenment and a plateau of productivity. There are various things which has been highlighted over here. Some of the things which I would like to talk upon based on this health hype cycle, digital health hype cycle, and also one or two from the health hype cycle is one definitely is the robotic process automation. RPA. That's how we call it in the tech side of things, the IT side of things. RPA is going to play a major role. It actually looks at seeing how many manpower and time is involved with certain redundant work and how a technology intervention can replicate that work. We can even look at, there are classic examples of insurance processing also as RPAs now, but still many of the hospitals choose to do that in a manual method by collecting the papers, by scanning the sheets and sending it all and stuff. So RPA is something which is going to be really big. It is at the peak of exaggerated expectations. Adaptability is a challenge over there, and understanding from the healthcare side, our industry is also going to be key. IBM Watson Health, we all know, it started with a bang. It requires something phenomenal to happen to do that. But many organizations in India, big organizations, even some of the Bangalore-based healthcare providers have adopted to that. And it's still early days, I would say. A lot could be done through that. Health records management, something very close to my heart because in my health tech journey a year back in last October, I started with health records digitization, patient health records management by patients through an app, facilitating it through the hospitals. But it all changed with COVID coming, but we've made some inroads. So that is something which is going to stay, and we'll see what the government has also done on those aspects in the coming slides. Conversational AI, again, conversational AI is again in the path of enlightenment. We already know a lot of conversational AI with respect to our everyday use with Hey Google, Hey Siri, Hi Alexa, and stuff. So those are examples. But then in a short while, when you download our app, you're going to say Hey Sheila, and our conversational healthcare AI is going to talk to you, and it is going to be of a great help. So these are some of the things with respect to digital health hype cycle. One other key thing from the health hype cycle also was something called as a HoloLens, which was an innovation by Microsoft. It was widely used in the UK during the pandemic scenario, wherein a team of doctors or a team of doctors with nurses need not get into the patient room. So only one lead doctor or the nurse goes in. They wear the HoloLens, wherein all the other team members sitting accessing it from some other place or in a nursing station or a doctor's office would be able to see the exact thing what the doctor or the nurse is seeing in the patient area. So it's a real-time thing, and HoloLens again proved it very useful in UK setting. Again, in India, we are still a frugal system. We talk of our jugaads, so it's still early days for us. But something which you could all look at is the various hype cycles for various industries, and there are certain good benchmarks that which we could pick up for the healthcare industry, which would be of great use during this time of the pandemic. So here we are. I'm a very optimistic person, so I think that I'm going to focus more on the positive outcomes amidst all this IPL fever. So it all opened with China, and there were a lot of theories: the Wuhan market theory, the bio weapon, weapon of mass destruction, bio weapon rumors that were floating around. But we are not in a position to test all those at this point of time. It's more important to spring into action and stuff. And as you know, US, Brazil, and India are in no particular order is in the top three. We would it looks as if we would be taking over in some time and stuff. So who's going to be our MS Dhoni or who's going to be our Andre Russell, we still don't know. That's going to be the key. Even for we are in Bangalore, so for Bangalore we don't even know who's that finisher in the team actually. So the strategic timeout that we are having amidst all this is the COVID-19. And yes, in healthcare, we need to have the power play coming together of information, education, and technology. That's when we will do that. So some of the key government initiatives, let's always start with the government. The Arogya Setu app, the contact tracing app, wonderful idea. A lot of countries have adopted. Even Singapore has made their contact tracing as a white label product, anybody can actually use it for their country as well. Many of the African countries are getting benefited through those. So the idea of this Arogya Setu app is to alert users if they come in proximity. The app is privacy first by design, and so the patient privacy or the data privacy is very key. It's to inform users and also carries all the relevant medical advisories. So it's constantly updated, and it's also available in 11 languages. And I'm sure this was when they launched. Ongoing, they would still see to it increasing and stuff. But one of the key thing here is what we have forgotten to realize is how many of us today who are attending this program have Arogya Setu app in our phone and also have kept our Bluetooth on. I am sure it could be less than 5 to 10% or even lesser, negligible amount. So we are failing by design in these kind of things. So while we laud the approach of the government, it is also important by each individual to actually keep the Bluetooth on whenever we are getting out of their homes, at least during those periods, to give you a real-time proximity scan and stuff. Similarly, the other big thing, the Arogya Setu was sometime in April, May. So the other big thing was actually the pinch hitter, I would really say, is the National Digital Health Mission, which came into effect from August. It has been opened out into some of the smaller and relatively bigger states, which had good infrastructure and developed towards the digital health, especially states like Kerala and stuff. So the National Digital Health Mission is trying to bring together give each of us a health ID. Very similar, it's like if you look at, the advertisement post the demonetization announcement, the next day in the headlines of all the newspaper, it was Paytm Karo, the first page. I still remember that on November 9th, November 8th, it was announced, November 9th, this was the headlines in all the newspapers. We all don't know when our Prime Minister had announced it at 8 p.m. How did Paytm know about it and gave the advertisements in all the newspapers in the headlines? It's a mystery. But anyway, it's a similar concept, the UPI concept with respect to the money transaction. The same thing we are using it in the healthcare record transaction, wherein each of us would have an ID. The doctors are going to have the ID, the hospitals are going to have the ID, the laboratories are going to have the ID, the pharmacies are going to have an ID, and data is captured at every point with this central ID. And again, there are two parts to the ID. One is NDHM ID, which is a 14-digit thing, and also an NDHM login name, which is like rajarajan.s at NDHM. So there's a two-part to it. And this is going to change. But then again, as I said, the big thing is whether the government is already rolled out the data privacy related rules and regulations in the country, which is still at a nascent phase. We were talking of the EHR Act of 2016. Then we were supposed to have the DISHA in 2018-19. The National Digital Health Blueprint was then announced in 2018 late, and then 2020 January, it was It was published in the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, that which has taken into the National Digital Health Mission. So this is something very close to us as a health tech providers, because we follow this framework as a healthcare aggregator. So companies like mine and certain other people, we become the Paytms and Google Pays of the health data setup. Okay. So another path-breaking thing, thanks to the erstwhile Board of Governors. I don't know how many of you know, the National Medical Council has come into effect recently, the last 1 or 2 days. The Medical Council of India was already, moved over, and we were having the Board of Governors, the erstwhile Board of Governors in the supersession of the MCI were functioning. And with their ages, we brought in the telemedicine practice guidelines with a lot of advisory organizations participating in this nationwide, and even many of us going and giving recommendations or updates to how it can be amended or made better. Still, there are still a lot of gray areas, but then importantly, there was a policy that has been now in available thing. The guidelines has been passed, and so it is actually the Annexure 5 of the Code of Conduct for any doctors. So it is more binding on the practitioner, and all of us other members, be it the patient or the technology provider or the hospital, we all become the stakeholders in this thing. The Alliance for Telemedicine Registry again formed as an alliance between Digital Health India, HIMSS, CAHO, and a few other Chime and a few other bodies of India. They are assessing each of these telemedicine providers, and they have given a wonderful report. And many of the telemedicine providers, you can also submit to the telemedicine registry. They do this evaluation, and it would be a great benchmark. And for hospitals and doctors who are to choose a telemedicine, it would be a wonderful tool. The Indian telemedicine market is nothing new. I've been setting up in early days in Apollo Ahmedabad. I've been setting up telemedicine centers in Rajasthan, North Gujarat, South Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh with ITC, e-Chowpals and stuff. 17, 18 years back when I started my career. Still, we are talking of telemedicine. But what has happened is it has taken a paradigm shift. Today, we are using a device-to-device mode with a lot of other features, which each of you would experience based on whichever provider that you're using. You could also test our product and let us know. We'll be happy to hear your feedback. So when it comes to this, the information education technology, how they all come together when it comes to the infection control practices, the digital marketing or the digital awareness has really been something at the forefront. We even have the famous Dilbert comics talking about social distancing, which I have represented over here. It's not only just social distancing, we should also stop high-fiving, hugging, and all the stuff. I'm sure each of you are seeing that live, even in the IPL, where they do, they don't do the high fives, they don't do much of hugging and, shaking hands and stuff. We also had one example of Yashasvi Jaiswal, bowing and saying Dhoni. So those are all wonderful things. So the Indian practice is already there for infection control through Namaste. And so that is beautifully brought out by Dilbert as well. We know social distancing is there everywhere. Even when you go to a wine shop, it is there. We've also seen unruly behaviors. As I said, I'm only looking at the positivities and the positive changes that which are coming out with these power plays of information, education, and technology, and how not to wear a mask. I'm sure just outside any hospital where I go, 80% of the people that I see in the general public, they don't wear the mask properly. So it is a major area. There are devices currently available in the market, technology, wherein even if you lift your hand to touch your face, it would alert, it would vibrate to tell you not to touch and stuff. And especially those who are outside, I would advise, subscribing to these kind of apps or getting these devices, especially the healthcare professionals, which would be very useful. I've also seen a video in YouTube, the learning that we had of a doctor who has even asked us to sellotape, put our hands and this thing in a particular position through sellotape. Is an orthopedician, if I'm not wrong, orthopedician or plastic surgeon. I'm having Dr. Naresh Shetty's effect that he's a stalwart orthopedician sitting there. So yeah, so that way you don't even raise your hands to touch your the face and stuff. So another area of major concern is the infection control practices. To be honest, we all know, I don't want to tell how much of infection control practice we have this as a quality indicator score. When our quality auditors or quality workforce team goes and does audit in various areas, we always see what is the nurse's score and what is the doctor's score, what are the other personal score and stuff. We know which team scores generally higher, which areas it is higher, but we were never close to above 90% on an average all the time before the COVID. But I'm sure the scenario has changed post-COVID. The surveillance methodologies have improved. There are even now real-time tracking cameras which can say that that person entered ICU whether they did the proper hand sanitizing technique or not, or hand washing technique or not. So those kind of things are there. But I would like to shift the focus on to the basic hand washing practices at home. So this is another thing which we have to keep spreading awareness. People know hand washing, but keep spreading awareness so that there is a lot of compliance to that in the general public, especially. We have wonderful systems. When you talk of quality, I would say that there has been phenomenal strides, be it with respect to the QCI, the WASH standards, the workplace assessment for safety and hygiene. Wonderful tool wherein many factories and institutions, when they had to reopen post the lockdown, those became a mandatory thing actually for them to follow. Some of the organizations which followed that had a better outcome than some of the bad things which happened in certain parts of the country. Again, from a hospital point of view also, we have a lot of technology inputs. There are a lot of companies. One such company is MedPlace, where data could be collected at the bedside. There is simple event reporting, robust algorithms for getting the hospital-acquired infections properly mapped in accordance with all the CDC and the National Health and Safety Network guidelines. Huge knowledge base for all the team members involved as well. Care bundles, the WAP bundles, the CAP bundles, we always keep talking about it. We always have this as a clinical excellence scores in the hospitals. The detailed antibiogram, I'm sure other speakers would speak about the antibiogram, especially. The real-time notifications, it's a wonderful tool. And these are all now become the new normal. So if you're a hospital, if you want to practice high level of infection control and also have to have quality properly in place, I would reckon you need to go in with softwares like these. Another area which has really made big news is the learning management systems. We are here with Cisco WebEx in this platform. We are imparting the knowledge that we have. Many people who have come in would have at least one or two take-home messages which you could immediately implement in your systems. So this area has been phenomenal. Earlier, many of these players, healthcare was one of the offering, but today many of these players have started focusing predominantly on healthcare. If I have about 5,000 plus members in LinkedIn, I would have at least 50% of the people who did the World Health Organization certification for the pandemic thing, the pandemic response and all the stuff in the first between April to May. From March to May, I had at least 50% of the people who have completed that. So that has been the rampant stride which has been made. Again, thanks to technology, the learning management systems, there are many. These are some. We've also been doing a lot of programs as such. Today we have this program, Impulses. Again, today we also have a big program starting in a short while, the Kaho Tech. Impulses is one of the important partners for us in that. As a life member, I'm just talking about them as well. And the future of medicine is going to be really that, how we can make all this play together. We also have our upcoming telemedicine, the rise and rise of telemedicine webinar. So all these learning management systems are phenomenal. It actually, this lockdown and this period has also given us a lot of people the time to do all these extra educational things, because in some areas, in some places, we are not traveling. In a city like Bangalore, if I don't travel to my work and back, I save about 2 to 3 hours minimally per day. So it just is the required thing for these kind of learnings, which takes about 6 to 8 hours a week. Again, a brilliant initiative by the state government with setting up walk-up test booths where they test the temperature. They can even do nasal swabs and stuff. And also the robotic interventions. We have a team called Invento Robotics, which launched the Mitra Robo, which is there in Fortis Hospitals, Bannerghatta. That's where it was started, and one more Phoenix Hospital in Bangalore. And this was early, I would say in June, July, this was the status. Currently, now many other hospitals across India would have also taken to it. So now we see about what we did when between this information, education, and technology, how we as a digital health company with health record transitioning, what we started with, have got into the telemedicine. So we are a research and innovation center for Ventec Solutions USA. Ventec Solutions is one of the largest contractor with the federal health. We manage the national healthcare quality data. We have about 43 petabytes of data. We have about 800,000 providers and 800 dialysis centers across US, which accesses our data center. So we manage the data and infra. We also do it for the defense health, and federal health is a CMS. So federal health, again, CMS is one of the largest healthcare expenditure body. As such, the expenditure of CMS is higher than the GDP of India. So that's the kind of healthcare spend that they have. So we want to become a health data aggregator for improved quality of care, clinical research, and saving life. Super proactive is what we look at. So as I said, the conversational AI, proactive patient engagement, real world data, and real world experience. So these are two important words. Today, we are all learning about all this data analytics, business intelligence, and various other big data and all this stuff. All this comes to this RWD and RWE. These are going to be the thing for tomorrow. The early stage acceptance of certain standard treatment protocols for this pandemic called COVID was also because of RWD and RWE, real world data and real world experience, based on which only we started using remdesivir, based on which we started doing plasma therapy also to patients, based on which favipiravir, and it all followed. The trials followed, but then these were early, RWD, RWE. So it takes the population data and does that. So it is going to be important. And in a world for tomorrow, we have to put the building blocks together today. So we need to start working on those. Chronic disease management is something we are really looking forward to, especially with respect to oncology, diabetics, and various other things. Again, at the end of it, we are still a healthcare data company. We still help patients access their healthcare data in the hospital through their mobile phones and stuff. We have our offering GoFHB, MyFHB for the hospital and this thing. So this is a playbook, how we are changing, how we are bringing the information and education and technology together to serve the world during Corona and post-Corona. We are a software as a service player, data aggregation, the health tech apps. We've done a lot of design thinking approach to it. We are trying to take all these RWD and RWE data, which would be a precursor for even clinical trials, as I said. The conversational AI, which we saw is far ahead in the Gartner hype cycle, and chronic diseases. And as I said, we already have presence in the US and certain other smaller countries, and now in India. So we are trying to make a global strategy, a multilingual approach, just like Arogya Setu. We are integratable with Amazon Alexa, Google Fit, HealthKit, and Apple smartwatches and stuff. So all this is going to actually combine and make it a better world for us going forward, for those who would like to adopt all these technologies and stuff. So, to summarize all this, what I would like to say, I would just like to put it into these 10 points, beautifully put together by the CDC guidelines. Infection control is going to be the key for people inside the hospital, especially more so. The PPEs, availability, non-availability, reusability are all being discussed, and we had certain speakers even said how the N95 masks are reused in hospitals due to the crisis situation and stuff. Identifying the aerosol generating procedures and keeping them aside and putting them in a certain enclosure so that it doesn't mix with the other air related areas. The respirators and stuff, the polycarbonate panels, prevention of which we also see in the booth and stuff. Protocols for monitoring healthcare personnel, self as well, and return to work guidelines. The additional support to healthcare personnel, the mental health, eating of those nurses. See, I've seen predominantly many of the hospitals, especially due to the PPE cost and involved, not to be a bearing on the patient. The nursing shift timings are like 12 hours, and in some hospitals even 24 hours with a 1 or 2 days break in between. Wonderfully done. But what happens to their eating and various other their family things and all also has to be looked at. I'm sure very many good institutions are already looking to it, and institutions like Ramaya would stand tall as an example for those. The evidence-based care, again, approved experiments only. A lot of, yesterday there was a news article about, this and all could also be done. I had one other doctor write a small reply to that. If only this happens in the US, the doctor who said all this is also possible could be in jail. We have the freedom of speech, but then we need to use it in the right way. The guidance for discharging, dynamic in nature. Can we look at a technology adoption and come up with non-contact discharges? So something for all the healthcare administrators who are attending today to think about. Can we have non-contact discharges? Okay, telehealth strategies, we've spoken, and many people would speak, and it's just resonating across all webinars. The awareness and evidence-based guidance. So the most important thing is source validation. Beware of social media. 90% of the items are being circulated without source validation. I'm not saying although 90% are fake, without source validation, only 10% are probably doing source validation. So please put a strong, tight process to it before you share something on social media. Reporting of hospital capacity and patient impact data. We have beautiful model across India. Many states have real-time availability of corona beds, not only in government facilities, but even in private hospital facilities, the COVID identified centers. Wonderful. The patient impact data, like how many patients are admitted, how many patients are cured and discharges, what is the mortality rate, and how it is kept at a 1.2 to 1.3 percentage. What are the COVID sequelae deaths that are happening? Wonderful research. If you can dissect through these, we are going to have really good data for the future. Strengthen facility based on responses, the various checklists and cohorting, which was beautifully explained by Professor Dr. Naresh Shetty as well. Reducing the staffing shortages. Today, many hospitals have already closed and communication plan. So various stakeholders and more. So how all this needs to come together, and how we as committed individuals, small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, that's the only thing that I ever asked. And what we are trying to do is take this information, the education that we are getting out of it by experimenting out of it, and the technology to help us further in this process to build the capacity to a COVID-free world. Thank you all. Thank you, MS Ramaya team. Thanks. Over to you, Dr. Arun.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Rajarajan. It was a wonderful presentation, right from the impact of technology in terms of the surveillance, the contact tracing, what are the various gadgets and tools the hospitals use to fight the COVID, and the use of technology in terms of educating the healthcare workers and the general public, the role of social media and information technology it has played. So you have beautifully presented today, and since we are running a little short of time, I am not able to summarize your presentation and not doing justice to your presentation. So let me take over you to the next speaker for today. So it's Dr. Shashank Devapur, who will be talking about the new normal in employee safety. Dr. Shashank Devapur is an infection prevention and quality implementation consultant for hospitals and healthcare organization. He has over 12 years of experience in clinical research, pharmaceuticals, and medical devices. He is currently the Director Medical Affairs at Reach Healthcare Hyderabad, and also the Director of Hriday in Mobby Health LLP Bangalore. He has helped over 60 hospitals establishing quality protocols to improve processes in operation theaters and central sterile departments when heading the medical device team at 3M India Limited. He has trained over 250 professionals across India in the only available international infection control course. He has trained over 100 central sterile supplied department technicians in the only professional course for CSSD technicians. He has given over 500 talks across India and internationally to train and educate healthcare professionals. He is a MBBS graduate from the prestigious Bangalore Medical College, and he also has a postgraduate in clinical research from Manipal University. He has done his infection control certification from New York State, USA, and CPCOIH and CPIH HIC trainer from the Consortium of Accredited Healthcare Organizations, Delhi. He is a technical editor for the CPHIC Basic Manual and also a member of the Governing Council of CAHO 2019 and 21. It's indeed a privilege to have such an erudite speaker with us today, and he'll be talking about the new normal in employee safety. Over to you, Dr. Shashank.
Thank you, Dr. Arun. Thank you for the wonderful introduction. Thanks so much. I would like to request so that I can share my screen right now. I would like to thank all the other speakers here today, Dr. Naresh Shetty, Dr. Dr. Nandakishore Alwa, Mr. Rajarajan. I think they've had wonderful talks. I'll try to keep my talk as brief as possible and try to finish it on time. Is my presentation visible right now?
Yes, we can find your presentation. Make it full screen, sir.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll be talking a little bit of what's the new normal in employee safety, and I'll be focusing a little bit on certain specific aspects that as healthcare workers we should know and we should understand. So these are some of the guidelines that have already been placed by the WHO, by the CDC, and the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare in India already. We'll talk a little bit about that. So as we said, healthcare worker safety today, as defined by WHO, is that it comprises a whole number of issues that are there. So one is it talks about elimination of hazard. It talks about using telemedicine as this thing. Second thing, it talks about substitution, using of disinfectant agents, which are better alternatives. Looks at engineering controls so that we have better, safer devices, so that there is no needle stick injuries that occur. The second thing is, the third thing that we'll need to look at is that administrative control, restricting access to this thing. As Sir said, having a single window system of passing COVID patients through a separate entrance. So that is very important. And work practice control, so that there's no recapping of needles. There's a better hand hygiene policy that is there. And last but not the least, we'll talk a little bit about the PPE, that's personal protective equipment. So I will concentrate my talk on the PPE. So already we have seen speakers who have already spoken about other things. Rajarajan has already talked about use of telemedicine and other things. So we're not going to get into that. So today's talk will be how to identify PPEs and how you can take this forward ahead in the next future that is there. What you should know and what you should not know. So just a quick look at how patient care has changed for us. If you look at what has happened is that this is how we used to look at patients. We used to interact patients with very closely. We used to interact with the doctors, nurses very closely. As Rajarajan said, even in IPL they used to give high fives and hugs, which has now gone out of place. So now if you look at the new normal, you can see over here a healthcare worker who has completely worn PPE suit from top to bottom, face shields, gloves, gowns and everything, and then is just only doing a swabbing of a patient who's sitting in a car. So such is a change that has come into healthcare society. We have no more, we have become faceless people, but we only look through our eyes and that's how we communicate. So let's try and see how these personal protective equipments are important for us. So the question today is, if you look at what is the kind of PPE kit that you should be choosing is the question that you need to understand. As we said today, as of today, we see that almost 5.8 million people in India have been affected, over 90,000 deaths. Out of those 90,000 deaths, almost 600 plus deaths have been of healthcare workers, of doctors, nurses, and other things. And if you see a recent article that was there, a hospital in Bangalore itself, where 60 of their own healthcare workers, doctors and nurses were affected with COVID because of improper PPE. So we'll try and see what are the things that you need to do to understand choosing the right PPE kit, how it can help protect you in the future for this COVID pandemic that is there. So the question is that how do you choose, what do you choose? Do you use a mask? Do you use a 3-ply mask? Do you use a respirator? Or do you use an N95 mask? The question is that how do you choose what is right for you? We will try and see how each one of that will be useful for us, and we'll go ahead with it. Yeah. So the first thing that you got to understand is that I'm sorry, and I forgot to put the link over here, but this link has been taken from a guidance document given by the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare known as the Rationale for Using PPE. So if you search for Rationale for Using PPE, MOHFW, you will be able to go to this link and actually download the original document from there, which talks about this. So most of my talk that has been taken from that. So what it says is what sort of PPE you should be wearing. Yes, you could be wearing coveralls, you could be using gowns and aprons. This is one of the most basic level of personal protective equipment that you need to use. As I said, it should be impermeable to blood. That means it should be water repellent, it should be fluid repellent. It should be of a single use, you should be able to throw it, preferably of light colors that should be there, and it should meet certain quality standards. So whenever you get vendors, you need to check whether they have an ISO 16603 class 3 exposure or equivalent that is there. So there are labs like Citra labs, there are DRDO labs, different labs, private labs which do these testing. So it's important that when you talk to your vendor suppliers, you ask them what quality certifications they have, and they are able to, they should be able to supply this for you. So this is the basic requirement for a coverall that is there. Other than coveralls, you can also use gowns, you can use aprons. So depending on what is the location, what is the severity of this thing, a gown or apron can be used. A coverall in the previous slide, as we showed, is something that should be preferably mainly used when you're doing any aerosol generating procedure, or you're in the ICU, or you're in the operation theater where there's a higher risk of exposure to this, the COVID-19 virus. That's the reason why you need to look at this. While the less riskier areas like the outpatient departments, the triage areas, the OPDs, where you could be using less covering these things like gowns and aprons that could be there as shown in these pictures over here. The next thing is that is understanding what is a surgical mask. A surgical mask is a 3-layer mask which is made of non-woven material, which has a high particulate filtration efficiency of 99% for 3 micron particles. So basically it should meet the ISI standard, or what the IS standard is saying is 16289-2014. So if you actually see, this is one of the things that we actually did when one of our vendors came. So we actually cut the mask and actually showed that there are 3 layers. So if you can see over here, there are 3 layers. There's an outer layer, there is an inner layer, and the innermost layer that is there, which is a filtered layer. So if they say it's a 3-layer mask, you should be able to cut it open and see that there are 3 layers over here, and all the 3 layers should have passed. And these are the testing standards that one should pass. Is the IS 16289-2014. It should pass these, and you should have certifications that say that these pass these. So triple layer mask should be typically worn by all healthcare workers who are in non-patient care areas, and definitely patients and patient attenders should be at least wearing a 3-layer mask. Please do not allow them to wear a cloth mask that is there. Okay, next comes the most important one, which a lot of people have been discussing is what do you mean by N95 mask or what do you mean by N95 respirator? Okay, actually the technical term is when we say it's an N95 respirator. The reason why we say a respirator is because a mask only protects the person who's not wearing it. That means it protects the people around the person who's wearing it. That means a mask is only protecting the other people, while a respirator protects the person who's wearing it and the people who are around him. So that's the reason why it's called as a respirator. Respirator, as you show in pictures, there could be of two different types. You could be using the ones over here in the picture below here, which is a use and throw, or which is used for limited time where you can use it and throw. While the ones on top, these are industrial grade N95 respirators or FFP2 respirator, or what is known as P2 or P3 respirators. These are typically borrowed from different industries where there is a fine dust and fine particles that are there. For filtering those, these are also used in typically in people who are doing surgical procedures or people who are in the ICUs. So for long duration where you use respirators such as this, these can be used cleaned and then reused for a longer time. They don't need to be changed. Typically, they can last you about 3 to 6 months on a single filter, and then even more if you're not having any problem breathing. So it has to meet certain standards, ASTM 1862, then the ISO 22609, and also the ASTM 20101-1. So these are other standards which they need to be meeting, and you need to check when vendors come and give you that these masks are uh, proving these efficacies or not. So they could be validated from different labs that are there. Obviously, reliable labs, government labs like CITRA or the DRDO lab are definitely much better in these aspects. One thing that I would like to clear is that you would see over here, there are two words that you always see over here, is that there is a word called N95 and there is a word called FFP2 or P2 or P3 that is there. So to understand the FFP2 nomenclature is by the EN, by the European, which is adopted by the ISO, which is adopted in India, while the N95 is typically the American, which is given by the NIOSH, this thing. So please note that any mask that says N95 has to actually have been approved by NIOSH. You just cannot say it is N95 like that. You can only say it is N95 equivalent, but it is not actually equivalent. But actually, in India, we only call it as FFP2 equivalent. If there are manufacturers who are N95 this thing, you can see there is a link down below. It's by the CDC and NIOSH. This is a list of all vendors in the world who have applied to NIOSH for their N95 respirators and got certified over there. So their list from A to Z, every vendor in the world from every country has been listed over there. So you can actually go check depending on who's your manufacturer. If somebody claims they are a manufacturer, there are those people like that. So in India, we have people like 3M, Magnum, Venus. These are some of the companies who have got themselves registered in NIOSH and got them approved as N95. While most others are only N95 equivalent, or what we would typically call as FFP2 mask. But filtration wise, efficiency wise, they're equivalent. There is no doubt about it. Both meet 95% filtration standards that are there. Okay. Next, when it comes to goggles, so goggles and eye protection is extremely important. As mentioned again, the virus can spread to your eyes, nose, and mouth, and that's the reason why protecting your eyes becomes very important, because whenever you're close to the patient can cough or sneeze or anything like that, or talk, and the saliva particles and the spit particles can actually fall onto your face, close to your eyes. To protect that, you need to be wearing something like a goggle. As we said, it should be of zero power, should be well fitting, it should be well adjusted to your frame of your face. It should allow ventilation, and most importantly, it should meet certain standards that are there. So a very important thing that you see in the picture below here, these are medical grade goggles. Please do not use goggles that are just which are available in the market. Please make sure they meet certain standards, as you mentioned earlier, the EN 1662 standard or the ANSI standard Z871-2010 that is there. So these are goggles which are reusable. Some of them are disposable. So you get goggles of both types. So kindly, if it's a reusable one, you can put it into a disinfecting solution and then use it again for the next patient that is there. Okay, so this is about goggles. So the next thing is that we will be talking about face shields. Face shields are again for eye protection. So instead of using goggles, a lot of people prefer to use face shields. Face shields again should be made of clear plastic, have good visibility. They should have an adjustable band which is comfortable to the head. It should be fog resistant, so it should be something that is fog resistant. Again, they meet the same standards in EN and ANSI as mentioned for the goggles, and they should be completely covering the face from the forehead down to the chin area, so that it allows, and it should allow you to wear a mask comfortably in that possible area also. It should not be the thing. And they could be again of a disposable or a reusable nature. If it is a disposable one, you can dispose it off into the red bin. And if it's a reusable one, you need to clean and disinfect it and reuse it. After that. Second thing is that you also see a lot of these people who are using hoods. So hoods are also a common eyewear protection that's there. This is meant for eye protection, and it's meant for protecting the eyes that are there and the face that is there. So hoods can be of much longer length or could be of shorter length, especially if you're using the powered air purifier or PAPR. You could be using a hood for those things, especially when you're doing surgeries and other procedures that's there. Shoe covers, again, this is a little controversial. You will also see later when we talk about this. The CDC does not mention of using shoe covers. They say you can use normal shoes and then walk around in the hospital. But in India and current recommendations by the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, it does say that you should use shoe covers, preferably all the way going up to your, covering your ankles and going up almost to your knees. So they could be of different materials that could be made of. The shoe covers are important. These should be again discarded depending on what type of material you are using it into different kind of bins. Gloves, again, gloves are important over here. Gloves should be made preferably of nitrile gloves, non-sterile. If you're using just normal examination, if you're doing an actual sterile procedure, yes, they should be sterile, preferably powder-free. Usually the length is also defined as 280 mm, but some of them come a little lesser depending on the size that they're equivalent. So a very important thing is that one should not be using gloves just like that. You should be using gloves which are of good quality standard, because remember, gloves even during manufacturing have minute tiny holes in that. So a good manufacturing standard, which is like as they meet the ASTM standard, which is B6319-10, and even the EN standard 374 or the EN 4455 should be meeting these standards. And you should have glove suppliers who actually are able to produce these certificates, tell you that they are safe. The number of holes per glove is definitely lesser. And as advised, you would also see in the videos later that we'll be talking about is that we should preferably use a double glove method. And most manufacturers try to give you a universal size, using a 7.5, which tries to fit most people's hands. So gloves should be of universal size, or it should be of different sizes should be available. So that should be clearly written before you open the PPE packs that gloves of so and so sizes are available. So gloves should also maintain certain quality standards that are there. A few other things, good things to have along with you when you're talking about ISO about these things is that companies that have ISO 9001, 2015, basically good quality management systems that are there in the hospital. But more specifically, if you're looking at medical device manufacturers, they should be having something called as ISO 13485 2016. This is quality management system for medical devices. So this is a more important certification. So manufacturers who are giving you should be having good quality management certificates that are there. Next thing is that they should be having good manufacturing practices. So they should be GMP compliant or good manufacturing practices certification that's there. Second thing, their materials and other things should be having a good quality. Example, they should have something like a Bureau of Veritas certification, which shows that the material quality is good. Some of the additional certifications that are that if you are exporting to the European Union, having a CE mark while you're exporting into the US country of US, you have US FDA approval. So these are some of the additional things that are happening. But at least some of these basic quality certifications should have, and you should ask them whenever any supplier is supplying you. Again, coming to what the CDC talks about. So this was just one clearance that I wanted to give. It does talk about covering from top to head to bottom using goggles, mask, gown, gloves, and other things. It only doesn't talk about shoe covers. So to let you know, according to Ministry of Health and Family Welfare in India, we still will be wearing a shoe cover. It's not that we are practicing without shoe covers, right? So we talk about a little bit of donning of PPE and removal of PPE. So I'm just going to play a video. This is thanks to KIMS Hospital Trivandrum and Kaho for this video. So we'll just look at how the donning of PPE is done. So if you don't wear it properly, it is a problem. Okay, so hand wash first before you enter the room. Once you enter the donning area, you do a hand wash again. So you follow the 6 steps of hand hygiene. You cover all the areas that are there. So check the PPE kit before you wear. So this is an example of a coverall gown that is being wear. Usually this is a little difficult one. So you should be making sure that before you wear anything like this, people drink enough water, they complete their toiletry procedures, and then they wear this gown, because for the next 4 to 6 hours they will not be able to remove it. So the first thing comes the gown, next comes the mask. So she's showing how to wear an N95 respirator. So each manufacturer has a slightly different design, but usually wearing and making sure that we wear it in the right way. So check a fit test or a leak test, so that when you're blowing out, there should be no air coming out through gaps. If there are any gaps, kindly press it down so that it does not any leakage. So eye protection, depending on whether you are wearing a goggle or a face shield, you wear something to protect your eyes. So the head cover is there, so you can cover your entire hair and everything. So as you wear, so you wear 2 pairs of gloves. So there is no cover, there is no exposure between the gown and the gloves. So that's how you wear the PPE. So wearing a PPE is definitely a challenge that is there. But actually removing a PPE, or what we call as doffing of PPE, could be a bigger challenge, because this is when you're actually exposed to all the elements that are there, and that's where you will have a huge risk of getting reinfected through it. So doffing becomes an extremely important procedure that is there. So let's look at the doffing video right now. The moment you enter the doffing area, the first thing is you remove the first pair of gloves. That's there. Put it in the red bin and do a hand hygiene on the gloves itself, so that if there is any virus particles that are there, those are killed, because you'll be touching this in different places. First thing is you remove your head cover carefully without touching the inside, and unzip the coverall gown. Then holding it inside, you pull your arm inside out so that you're not touching the outside part of it. Then you inside out, you remove it and then roll it from inside out, and then dispose it in the bin that is there. That's the yellow bin that's there. Then you take out the goggles. So if it's a reusable one, you put it in a disinfecting solution. If not, you can dispose it. Then you take out the gloves, again doing it in inside out without touching the outside. Roll it and put it in the red bin. Then again do the hand hygiene. Mask should be removed last before you're leaving the room. So if it is still, if you're in the isolation room, you should come out of the isolation room and then remove the mask. Without touching yourself, holding the ends of the thing, then you dispose the mask that is there. And then after removing the mask again, you do a hand hygiene that is there. So that's about the importance of removing or doffing the thing that is there. And one of the important things that you need to remember is that you need to understand that you don't need to wear all the PPE in all the areas that is there. So if you're looking at the OPD where the doctor is sitting across the table and talking to the patient is wearing a mask and you are sitting over there, all you need is an N95 mask and gloves. If you're looking at doing lab swabbing, or you're doing someone who's swabbing who's there, yes, you need to wear the entire thing, because the reason is because you'll be putting the swab into the nose or the mouth of the patient, so there could be a cough or a regurgitation that can occur. So to protect yourself, N95 mask with a coverall gown, you could use a coverall gown or an apron that is there, gloves, face shield and then shoe covers also definitely. If you're looking at emergency, in the emergency, depending on the area that you're looking at, people who are in the emergency at the triage area, you could be actually having an N95 mask, gloves, and definitely you should have polycarbonate barriers over there so that the patients don't directly come and get in touch with you. Second thing is if you're looking at ICU, yes, in ICU you should be wearing the complete coverall gown that's there. When it comes to the OT operation theater, if you're wearing all of this, you could either use an N95 mask or you could use a respirator as shown earlier, which is a reusable respirator that is there. You could be using something like that. And while you're looking at the reception area or other places like that, N95 mask and gloves should be worn by the people. A very important thing that you have to remember is that patients should be advised, along with the attenders, that they should be wearing a 3-layer surgical mask. Hand hygiene stations should be available in all places. Cough etiquette should be mentioned, making sure that they cough or sneeze into the elbow or into a disposable paper towel and then dispose it in a dustbin that is there. So all of these should be followed along with social distancing, and that's how we'll be able to prevent this infection from occurring to us and affecting our more healthcare workers that's there. So with that, I would like to say thank you. This is a quick summary of what the personal protective equipment are about and what we are going to be talking about. So with that, I would like to thank again all the participants who have been here today. I would again urge all of you that since we are from CAHO, CAHO Tech is about to start now. Actually, 5 o'clock is the inauguration session. So the moment we finish this, we'll be actually logging in for the next session. So CAHO Tech is there for 5 days from 25th to 29th. There are a lot of innovative sessions that are there. So we would request all of you to log in to www.kahotech.com and join in for the various talks that are happening from speakers from across the world. So that's my contact address. So if anybody has any doubts or wants clarification, feel free to contact me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Shashank, for taking us through various safety precautions the healthcare workers need to take to protect themselves and also to protect the patients. And I think many participants would have now got greater clarity in terms of what sort of PPE needs to be used in situations and then how they actually need to use this PPE. And the most important part is also the disposal of PPE at the end of use. Thank you very much, Dr. Shashank, and I will go to the next speaker, Dr. Nandakishore Alva. He is a senior pathologist, the head of the Plasma Bank and Transfusion Ramaiah group of medical institutions. To introduce our patient, Dr. Alva, trained from the prestigious Jawaharlal Nehru Institute of Medical Sciences, Pondicherry, completed his MBBS from Mysore Medical College and his MD Pathology from JJ Medical College, Delhi. He is also visiting fellow in head and neck oncopathology in Mayo Clinic, Rochester, USA. Dr. Alva has also served as Vice President Medical for Karnataka Hemophilia Society, one of the philanthropic organization of the state for the cause of hemophilia patients. He is also Vice President of Karnataka chapter of Indian Association of Pathologists and Microbiologists. Has also served as Honor Secretary to the same institute for 6 years from 2006 to 12 and is actively involved in organizing various national and international scientific programs. Dr. Alva has several research publications to his credit in the indexed national and international medical journals. His research study on salivary gland tumors published during his tenure in JIPMER bagged the NBT National Award for Best Research Paper in the National Conference of Cytology. Dr. Alva has a special interest in the field of molecular pathology, plasma banking, oncopathology, hemato-oncology, and quality management system in the laboratory. He is also a passionate teacher of pathology and strongly believes in delivering good diagnostic and transfusion practice today. Here he is with us today to talk on the topic the safety of transfusion medicine at times of COVID. So as we know, the COVID has affected blood banking and transfusion medicine, especially at times of lockdown. There was donor deferral and a reluctance of a lot of people to come and donate blood voluntarily. Though at that time the surgeries also stopped, but over a period of time, a lot of blood banks started having a shortage of blood and blood products. So it was very important to set up a very robust screening program to screen the the donors and ensure that there is safety for the donors as well as for the recipients. And in the recent times, sir has been actively involved in establishing the plasma blood bank, and we are doing a good number of plasma transfusions and helping a lot of patients at these times of COVID. So I now request Alva sir to start the session. So I request you to unmute yourself first.
Yeah, I've unmuted the line to Dr. Nandakishore Alva. Sir, you have the presenter conference and your line is on an unmute, sir.
You can hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. Can you see my screen also?
Not yet, sir. It's okay. There's a share column where you can share your presentation.
Yeah.
Next to the.
Can you see now?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Click on share and then the screen. Next to start video and share, there's an option. Yeah, it's coming up now.
Yeah. You can see now?
Not yet.
Okay.
Yeah, it's coming up now. Yes. Good, sir.
Yes, you can see now my screen?
Yes, yes, we can, sir.
Okay. You can hear me also properly?
Very clear, sir. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Arun, for that generous introduction. I thank Dr. Naresh Shetty also to introduce me to this forum. And a very good afternoon and to all the viewers. Very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. And this talk is particularly shall concentrate on safety in transfusion medicine during these testing times of COVID pandemic. Greetings from our parent institute, MS Ramaiah Medical College and Hospitals. At the outset, I would like to dedicate this presentation to Shri S.P. Balasubramaniam, whom we have lost just today afternoon, who have been an inspiration to our entire blood banks in the state. Many of us may not be knowing about this. There is a philanthropic organization called as Karnataka Hemophilia Society. I was vice president of it. And SPB was very closely involved in generating funds for this philanthropic organization, as well creating funds for giving free blood donations or free blood for the people who are suffering from hemophilia. Great salutes to you, sir, and I dedicate this presentation to you. Ladies and gentlemen, COVID-19 present scenario, as all of us know, is quite alarming. Confirmed cases of 3.2 crores plus around the world and 6.6 million cases only in India, with deaths of 9.8 lakhs worldwide and close to a lakh in India. A very alarming situation in COVID-19. And my esteemed co-speakers have touched upon the various facets of the safety that should be implemented in the patient care, that should be implemented in the hospital. And I'm concentrating on one aspect of the hospital care, that is the transfusion medicine. So let me focus this and finish this within the next 20 minutes as the time allotted to me. with how safety in transfusion medicine is important in COVID times. We are bothered about safety for the donor, safety for the recipient, and the safety of our staff who are dealing with the transfusion processes. So let us see what kind of safety is important in a donor's perspective, what kind of safety is important in a recipient perspective in the times of this COVID. National guidelines on safe blood transfusion and COVID-19 has given various guidelines on the first National Blood Transfusion Council guidelines, which came in early in March, and second interim guidelines came somewhere in June, and we have updated clinical management protocol from Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, Government of India, which came in July. And also we have certain guidance documents for convalescent COVID plasma therapy from Indian Society of Transfusion Medicine, dated 25th July of 2020. And also we have certain reference materials from clinical memorandum of US FDA dated 23 August. So I'll be touching upon these aspects and focus on how these guidelines have helped us to getting into a proper safety in the blood transfusion process during COVID times. My first half of the presentation, am I stuck here? Yeah. The first half of the presentation for 10 minutes will be how the routine blood transfusion should be addressed during COVID times. And the second half, I am concentrating on the plasma therapy or the plasma banking purposes. So as the history says, there are no reported cases of transmission in the past 2 decades when the brothers of this corona came, like SARS and MERS-CoV. And virus detection in blood was only happened in few symptomatic patients. And hence, American Association of Blood Banking and US FDA and Center for Disease Control are not recommending any additional test, because the history has taught us a lesson that, yes, can we go ahead with a safe transfusion when we are running at the time of pandemic? It says yes, because the respiratory virus is not transmitted by transfusion or blood transfusion. And hence, we stick on to the basic 5 tests of HIV, HBV, HCV, syphilis, and for malaria to test for transfusion transmissible diseases and not for any respiratory virus infections. And hence, for all practical purposes, the transfusion during the pandemic was supposed to be safe, provided if you follow certain guidelines which are there for it. Yes. So that comes to what are the modified donor exclusion criteria. So we have general exclusion criteria, but when we are running during the period of SARS-CoV, what are the modified donor exclusion criteria? Where you have to look into confirmed SARS-CoV-2 by RT-PCR. Suppose if there is an RT-PCR positive case, you're not supposed to take it, though there is no transmission. Okay, and very mild or pre-symptomatic or moderate and severe cases should be deferred for 28 days after discharge or after home quarantine. And it should be deferred for 28 days from the last possible close contact exposure. Okay, and also it is deferred for 28 days when you have a travel history from a country where there is a suspected community transmission. The guidelines say that there is no transmission of the disease, but however, whenever there is as a general guidelines for blood transfusion, whenever the patient suffers from any infection, we generally defer the donors. So that same thing shall continue with with the SARS-CoV infection, because it is an infection. That's it. Donation amidst of COVID crisis. Why? It has been found that there was no donations happening in the hospitals. And you may be astonished to see that the blood donations have dropped by close to around 75% just because of the fear of the pandemic. People are not coming forward to the hospital because they know hospital is started with the COVID. So they don't want to come. And in addition, they have got unnecessary apprehension that if you do donate a blood, or if you go to a hospital, donate a blood, something will happen to us. So this is what happens. This apprehension has actually dropped the blood donations in all the blood banks across the country, across the world, close to by 75%. But imagine we have non-COVID patients who need the blood. And in this situation, we need much more kind of motivation for the people and guidance for the people to donate amidst of this COVID crisis. Hence, Government of India has actually, the Transfusion Council has promoted camps, and it is definitely essential to replenish these stocks. National Blood Transfusion Council and hence promoting the voluntary donation camps across the country, but it has to be done under certain strict guidelines. What are the guidelines for the staff safety? Okay, so unlike the other routine cases wherein we handle the donations, blood donations, we handle the blood banks. So little more strict guidelines are required because we don't know which patients are walking in, which patients are symptomatic, which patients are asymptomatic, obviously. So at least an OT gown, head and cap mask, of course, N95 mask, gloves, face shields, good hand sanitization, and social distancing at every part and at every field or every point of a blood bank is essential for the safety of the staff. So as far as the medical examination is concerned, we are a little more strict in these situations because temperature monitoring, a general physical examination, a good history taking, and education regarding the responsibility of the donor is very important. If you are conducting an voluntary blood donation camp, in fact, we need to educate the patient, we educate the donor that suppose if he has today he has not developed any fever symptom, but he develops symptom after 7 days, what is his responsibility? His responsibility obviously should inform the blood bank that yes, I have developed this symptom or I have developed positivity for COVID at the end of 7 days. So we can take a responsible action from the blood bank side. So though there is no transmission of the disease, suppose if you are not transmitted, if you are not transfused this blood bag, we generally discard it. Okay, so there should not be, of course, obviously my previous speaker has to no handshaking, no hugging. Perfect cough etiquette has to be maintained in the blood bankings, in the blood banks, or in the areas where we are conducting blood camps. So phlebotomy guidelines, in fact, Ramaya Medical College, Ramaya Memorial Hospital has, in the blood bank, we have organized few of the donation camps amidst of this COVID pandemic. And it was a different experience altogether because people are scared to come in. And we are not supposed to gather at any point of time. So how we have performed it? So we have performed it with a strict social distancing of 6 feet of wherever it is, whether it is the donation couches with a 1 meter distance, or the distance between the technicians, technical staff, distance between the pre-examination process, and all these areas, strict social distancing was maintained. And when we conducted one of the voluntary donation camps, we ensured that all the donors will pass through a disinfection tunnel. And through this disinfection tunnel, they pass through and then they come to the donation areas. So this is how we did it, with a strict social distancing and adequate measures for personal sanitization. So a safe disposal of biomedical waste was also conducted with disposable bed sheets and covers, etc., at the point of donations of the blood. We have restricted donation areas. There's a restrict donation at geographically restricted areas. For example, if the in points of during lockdown periods, there were some red areas, green areas, blue areas. So we have restricted the donation areas at the geographically restricted areas, and donor education and communication was given to each and every donors for the next 14 days, and proper health education is given to all donors how to keep a communication with the blood banks. Donor education materials was given to them, and we had synchronized with the voluntary donor organizations. And in fact, these voluntary donor organizations have done a tremendous job in organizing such a beautiful blood donation camps in spite of this pandemic happening across. And we have ensured that there should not be more than 100 donors. We have, in fact, collected close to 60 to 70 donations in each of these donation camps. So ensure that post-donation care is given, a good refreshment is given, and of course, a proper hemovigilance is kept on each and every units that is been collected from these camps during the COVID period. Hemovigilance is very important either when you are transfusing the blood, or if you're developing any complications or any blood transfusion reaction. This hemovigilance activity has kept us in tow and see that we don't have any untoward things that is happening because of transfusion. If I just pass on to the collection of convalescent COVID plasma, Ramaiah Medical College has been a pioneer in starting up this project. As Dr. Naresh Shetty has already told, this is the second place in the state where we developed a full-fledged state-of-art plasma donation center. Dr. Naresh Shetty was continuously behind me. Just this has to be started, and we have to see that the COVID convalescent plasma donation has to come in a very beautiful way, and definitely this will help a lot of people across. As all of you know, convalescent COVID plasma is the one which is recovered from the symptomatic patients. And generally, who are the people who can donate this? Males, all males, and nulliparous females who are more than 50 kgs in weight. So these are the first group of people. So you must educate the people that all males and nulliparous female, that means the females who have never been pregnant, and if they are above 50 kgs, they can come and donate plasma, and they should be of the age group of 18 to 60 years. Who are these patients? These are the recovered symptomatic patients. So most of the patients are symptomatic. They would have been in the hospital and they would have been recovered from that, or they can be asymptomatic donors as well. I mean to say they have been tested positive, but they're asymptomatic. But if they're asymptomatic or symptomatic, they should be accepted if they have got anti-SARS-CoV-2 IgG antibodies. So when there is a satisfactory IgG antibodies which is present in their plasma, we can motivate these people to see that they come for donation and donate. Now, it is very important to know when to collect COVID plasma, how to search for the donors. Complete resolution of the symptoms for 14 to 28 days. So please remember, so when the patient has completed 14 days of symptom-free period, he has to have a negative PCR test report, and if he has got a negative PCR test report, he can donate the plasma after 14 days. Or if he has got a complete resolution of symptoms, he can donate it after 28 days without a testing of a PCR. So ideally, he should have a symptom-free period of 28 days. For example, today he has been tested positive. Okay, so he is asymptomatic. For the next, after 28 days, he can donate the plasma. Okay, so many of the cases, it is said as per the guidelines, prior diagnosis is not mandatory. It doesn't mean that the patient should have a established positive PCR report, because he can be just an asymptomatic person and still he can develop the antibodies. So those who have developed antibodies can donate the plasma. And every patient or every donor, prospective donor, can donate twice a month. So once in 15 days, he can donate, he can come and donate. So practically in a year, he can donate 24 times. What we will do once these patients come into our plasma banking? So once they arrive at plasma bank, we do what is called as pre-donation testing. Okay, so this pre-donation testing is there in all types of blood donations, but there are certain more important things which we have to look in when we are talking about COVID plasma. Complete blood counts. He has got a normal blood count and normal hemoglobin above 12.5, normal total leukocyte count, normal platelet counts, and other counts. When it is normal, he becomes eligible. Of course, ABO-RH antibody screening is done, and routine transfusion transmissible disease screening is done. So as all of us know, it is only for HIV 1 and 2, hepatitis B, hepatitis C, VDRL for syphilis, and for malarial screening. So it is only the 5 tests which are done as transfusion transmissible disease screening. And especially more important in the patients of COVID who are giving COVID plasma, serum protein estimation of more than 6 grams per deciliter is a must, because they should not have low proteins and we are taking their proteins out of the body. And of course, most important will be the anti-SARS-CoV-2 IgG antibodies. So the initial ICMR recommendations were titers of 1:640 by ELISA. So now many companies have come out with the ECLIA systems. So in ECLIA systems, we have signal to cutoff ratios, which is called as SC ratios. So SC is, in one of the company, it is around more than 12, which is FDA approved. In another company, of IgG value of more than 10. So it varies from company to company, and what is the validation of the kits done by FDA at that point of time. Okay, so those patients who are having less than the required titers will fall under the category of convalescent COVID plasma of low titer, and we are not supposed to take these plasma and transfuse the patients, because guidelines say that there should be a significant amount of IgG, a significant amount of anti-SARS-CoV IgG antibodies in their blood, so that their blood can be utilized for plasma transfusion. What is the safety aspect we have to look in the donor side? Okay, motivating a donor who has suffered from COVID, I personally felt it is very, very difficult, because if you just step onto their shoes and see, you just imagine what kind of mental trauma, mental agony, and the stress he and his family would have undergone for the past 3 months. So it is very difficult to see that they come and donate. Of course, they will have kind of issues like, yes, I want to save another patient, but that kind of motivation has to come from within, and it is very difficult to motivate the donors. But however, we are finding that huge number of donors are coming into the blood banks to give the, I'm very thankful for them. Of course, we look into the donor safety at each and every point of time. A good care is taken either before or during or after the pheresis, and this process is called as plasmapheresis. And we have to monitor about adverse donor reactions. For example, you need to observe this patient for at least 30 minutes, give him a proper refreshment, ensure that a proper hydration is done for this patient, and see that he takes rest for at least half an hour, see his vitals, check his BP, check his pulse and respiratory rate and everything, and then only see that you discharge the patient from the donor area. Okay, so it is important that we need to archive certain donor sample also, and it has to be archived at -30 degrees centigrades. Okay. Safety. So safety in plasmapheresis. When we are doing a plasmapheresis also, we need to take an utmost safety measures. For example, a maximum convalescent COVID plasma that can be aspirated, that can be taken at one point of time, will be 500 ml. Please remember, if a patient can donate a 500 ml, that is 450 to 500 ml of plasma, this we divide into 2 units and give it to 2 patients. So in other words, you are giving a donation of 1 unit and you are saving 2 patients' life, and this has to be kept in mind. That's maximum convalescent plasma that can be taken at one point of time is 500 ml. But in our experience, out of more than 100 donations what you have already undergone, few patients have developed a certain sort of headache or dizziness or kind of weakness. We would have stopped at 200 ml, and in that case we can take out only 200 to 250 ml and see that it is given for only 1 patient. So as all of you know, it has to be stored at -30 degrees Celsius in the deep freezers, aliquoted in 200 ml bags and stored as convalescent frozen plasma for COVID patients only. We are not going to use it for any other patients, and a separate shelf has to be kept in the deep freezer. And if it is available, a separate deep freezer also we can arrange it so that all these things will go into a separate shelf altogether. Okay, in case you need to transport, because we are getting requests from across the state and even from the North India also sometimes, COVID plasmas has been airlifted recently. The transport has to be done in a temperature controlled condition so that during the transport there is no problem with the temperature regulations, and a strict cold chain is maintained throughout. Safety for the recipients. So as the ICMR says, PaO2 and FiO2 of 200 to 300, or respiratory rate of more than 24, or saturation of less than 93 at room air is the patients who are at the mild or moderate stage who are the ideal recipients. And Ministry of Health and Family Welfare says that adults or children with the clinical features of COVID or respiratory rate more than 24 or SpO2 of less than 94, that is 90 to 94, are the ideal people for whom COVID transfusion, COVID plasma transfusion should be done. Of course, a separate informed consent form also should be done. A request form should mention that off-label use of CCP, because the guidelines say that it has to be read as off-label use. And we need to go for the red cell antibody screening specially, and minor cross-matching using donor plasma and the patient red cell should be done. The clinical use of convalescent plasma should be focused on moderate cases of increasing oxygen requirements. They should be selected. And patients, if you're having IgA deficiency or allergy to immunoglobulins, should be prevented from using this. And 1 to 2 units of 200 to 250 ml of plasma can be transfused 24 hours apart. Okay, so this should be done as per the guidelines, preferably from 2 different donors. Okay, so we can transfuse 2 units, and it should be from 2 different donors, and each unit will have 200 to 250 ml of plasma. So the infusion of CCP, you have healthy individuals, 2 to 3 ml per kg per hour. 1 unit should be transferred for 1 to 1.5 hours, that is 1.5 hours. Volume overload in patients with volume overload and heart patients, there should be the unit should be transfused over the period of 4 hours with the same dosage of 1 ml per kg, less dosage of 1 ml per kg per hour. It is important that we need to monitor these transfused patients, because safety is of utmost concern in the transfused patients. Monitor the patients immediately before and after the transfusion, and 15 minutes after the transfusion, you need to again monitor the patient, and every hour during the transfusion, also you need to monitor this patient, and upon the completion of transfusion, again you need to monitor this patient, and 4 hours after the completion of the transfusion, you have to monitor these transfused patients for all the vitals. Okay. So just to conclude, the agenda in a transfusion medicine or in the blood bank during the time of COVID remains the same, as we need to have a safe donor, safe recipient, and the safety for the staff. So we need to promote voluntary and safe donations and motivate each convalescent plasma donor. Ladies and gentlemen, please motivate the convalescent plasma donors. Tell them, yes, this is a noble thing what you can do, and you can save 2 more patients' life who is suffering from problems, or who is suffering from the COVID. So we at Ramaiah will ensure that your plasma reaches the right person at the right time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for a very wonderful presentation. You took us through the the entire presentation on the plasma banking. Who are the eligible donors? Who are the eligible recipients? What are the safety precautions that we need to undertake? And also the pressure on you to stock up blood and blood products, especially at times of COVID. And I'm sure, your talk will definitely motivate a lot of people to inform the public, if at all their relatives are post-COVID, to donate plasma. It goes a long way in helping a lot of people. So as we come to the concluding part of the webinar today, I would like to just conclude by sharing some thoughts from the WHO. So World Health Organization, as you know, has been recognizing the importance of the patient safety as a global health priority, and has dedicated September 17th as a World Safety Day. And the objective of World Safety Day is to increase public awareness and engagement and improve the global understanding, and also to spur global solidarity and action to promote patient safety. Especially in the year 2020, as the world faces the onslaught of pandemic, and with healthcare workers facing the brunt of this particular situation, it has rightfully dedicated this particular year towards the healthcare worker safety also. So it says that, okay, healthcare workers and patient safety goes hand in hand. A safe healthcare worker can always keep the community safe. We had a distinguished panel of speakers today who spoke about myriad of things, right from Dr. Naresh Shetty elaborating the various practices that we adopted as an organization to ensure that we are agile, we are adaptable, and also as one of the leading medical institutions in this country, we're responsible enough to ensure that we were the first to act when the situation arose, and we acted in a manner that we not only became pioneers, but we set certain standards and benchmarks, and an example for the rest of the institutions to follow. Followed by Dr. Raja Rajan, who spoke through the entire gamut of information technology, how it has helped in the situation of COVID, and how healthcare organizations who were initially reluctant to adopt have voluntarily adopted to various healthcare technologies. And he has also spoken about the importance of surveillance, contact tracing, the importance of digital health records, and the use of tools that help in fighting this pandemic, especially the infection control modules and other things. And then we had Dr. Shashank, who spoke on the most important topic of employee safety, especially the role of the appropriate choosing of the personal protective equipment. So we need to really understand what are the kind of products that we are using, in what situations we should use, so that we all know that, okay, PPE is a scarce resource, and we cannot waste it, and we have to use it appropriately. And not only that, the disposal of these PPE is also very important. And Dr. Alva, a senior pathologist who has been instrumental in starting the plasma blood bank, has given us thorough knowledge about the blood banking systems and the importance of plasma banking today. So as we conclude today, let me thank all the participants. We had over 300 participants today with us across various platforms. I thank one and all the participants. I thank all the speakers, Dr. Naresh Shetty, Mr. Rajarajan, Dr. Shashank, and Dr. Alva for presenting your insights today. I'm sure the audience would have really enriched their knowledge with all your presentations. I would like to thank Mr. Ashwini from Cisco WebEx, who is a host who offered her hosting platform today for us, and the streaming went very well without a glitch. Thank you very much, Ms. Ashwini. I thank Mr. Yatindra, the Chief Information Officer at Ramaya Hospital, for all the tech support, ensure that there are no tech glitches, and I would fail in my duty if I don't thank the entire team of Center for Quality Promotion and Strategic Initiatives led by Dr. Uma Shankar, who was instrumental in hosting this platform. His team, Dr. Uma Shankar, Ms. Kavya, Suresh, Chinmay, their team enthusiastically participates in this particular Safety Day. From the entire week in Ramai, we are celebrating the World Safety Day program. They have organized series of events right from error room to minds to everything that they can do possible to improve the awareness of patient safety. And I thank Dr. Uma Shankar for this. And I thank everyone. Have a nice evening. Stay safe. Please ensure that you're wearing mask all the time. And take care of everyone. Thank you. Thank you. Have a nice evening. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mr. Arun. Let me just take a minute to thank you for all the support that you did. And sorry, I think I would just need another minute before you wind up. I would want to take a quick intro about you to the team. Just wanted to let everybody know who's Mr. Arun. Dr. Arun MS is an assistant hospital administrator from Ramaya Memorial Hospitals and is also an associate professor from Department of Hospital Administration. Um, Thank you so much, sir, for all your achievements, and you're a current present member secretary for Safety and Sentinel Committee, and you're also a member of Cohotech. And of course, you've been a certified NABH assessor and a consultant with CII Healthcare Excellence, and you're also skilled in hospital strategy and planning and quality management. And of course, you thanked your entire team for it. And you're also a healthcare professional with a doctorate and for hospital administration and management from renowned Kasturba Medical College of Manipal. Right. Thanks, Dr. Arun, for sharing this wonderful evening. And I think it was a wonderful sharing that you did. And I think you summarized it very well, how important for all of us to be very safe during this pandemic and also the measures that we all need to take. Thanks, entire Ramaya team, for supporting all of us. And thanks to everybody for hosting this session too.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you all.